the idea of natural law or objective morality. I know in your civilization, you're at such a unity consciousness state that you don't need any moral rules because you just know that everyone is yourself. But here on Earth, I've been researching this topic of what is objective right and wrong. And it seems to be that most human beings don't even actually know what is right and wrong. So as civilizations travel into the stars and come into contact with other civilizations, do they have a code of morals that they say?
Some do, not all. And you'll find that certain moral codes that different groups have may be in complete conflict with the moral codes that other groups have, just as you experience on Earth.
Mm.
It's also like that with different extraterrestrial civilizations. Now, at a certain point, the civilization will become so advanced that they're able to begin to see reality through sources' eyes. And at that point, the idea of morals and these sort of created guidelines go out the window for the most part, because you're able to navigate rather intuitively. You're able to understand where the other being's coming from. You're able to understand really what the natural flow of the situation is and what different types of interventions will lead to. So you can move around situations with great ease. So guidelines aren't necessarily as relevant at that point, because you don't need to rely on the guideline to make the most ethical or positive choice. You simply are able to observe that naturally. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I get that. That's where as I look at what is objectively right and wrong in all situations for all beings, it seems to be that you just do not violate another's free will choice. That if you wanted to boil it down, it's don't commit violence, don't commit theft, allow them to make their own free will choice. Would you agree that that is fundamental morality?
Well, we'll talk about it like this. Free will is sort of an interesting concept because most beings do not have free will. What we mean by this is the following. Most beings, especially on Earth, are governed by the idea of impulse, cultural conditioning, programming. They do not live their lives according to their own will. They live their lives according to the will of others. And no one's forcing that on them for the most part. Some people are in situations where others are forcing their will upon them. The idea is many people on Earth have been conditioned to follow the wills of others without force even really being needed. So in a certain way, most beings on your world do not have full access to their free will. Once you reach a certain level of consciousness, you are able to activate free will through recognizing you do not have to listen to the conditions that have been projected upon you by others. So free will is something that is developed through evolution, just as the soul is something that is grown through spiritual practice, just as the energy body is something that is grown through spiritual practice. Without these things, these dimensions of the self are dormant. So the same is the case with free will. So in a certain way, free will is being violated all the time on your world, commonly. And most people don't realize they are victim to it, and most people don't realize they're contributing to it. So once you have activated free will, you will start to create ripples and bubbles and shifts within your society, your community, and ultimately your planetary culture. So the culture becomes more encouraging of individual sovereignty and free will. The quality we would describe as being more perhaps useful to talk about is not necessarily free will, but personal sovereignty. That's how we would describe it. That's the thing to cherish. That's the thing to respect. Because for most people, their will has not yet been freed. If all of your wills were completely free, you would have no need to do magic. For as you know, do what thou wilt is the whole of the law. That's the reason for all of this.
Yeah.
So
Liberation of the will.
exactly. So most people aren't there, but what can be respected, what can be nourished, what can be amplified is personal sovereignty. And that leads someone to the activation of free will, giving somebody the freedom to really make their own choices, to live their own life, creating a space for them to do so, and respecting their choice.
Yeah, I definitely get what you're saying, that most human beings aren't even capable of acting on their own free will. As I look at that, it seems that humanity has been ruled by this idea of authority, that we obey external authority because we don't have our own inner authority, like you say, the sovereignty. And so we've created these governments where it's just authority.
Yes. And you're learning to undo that now because you're seeing the limitations of these things. You're able to look at how these things are impacting your world. And now on television, on YouTube, all over the place, you're able to see these things have really outlived their usefulness.